So he's the because you're wearing two hats here. It's you can sort of multiple hats. Okay. So you can sort of talk about the success story with self-regulation in South Africa, as well as giving us an update on Indonesia. And then we have Léon Dijksman, who is a board member of Netherlands sort of WASPA equivalent. We could sort of describe it that way. So okay, I have it down as the Dutch regulator for mobile services, but I think what you said yesterday was sounding even more long-winded than that. Also known as payinfo.nl, right? Which is what we have on the. Yeah.
Well, that's also my mic is not working.
Okay. And so you will be sort of bring.
This one.
Huh?
Yeah.
So that will work. Sorry, complicated name. So I simplified it for you. Let's call it PayInfo. It's our website. It's very short. Okay. It's how we are known to the consumers.
Yes.
But the full name is Stichting Gedragscode Mobiele Internetdiensten. You can't sell that in.
Okay.
Say that 3 times fast, I dare you.
It really trips off your tongue, so I'm very impressed with that. Okay, and then also we have on the panel Kev Dawson, Director at regulatory risk management firm MCP Insights, which helps DCB and mobile VAS companies with market intelligence and compliance. So,
Indeed.
So, okay, so great. So let's get started. And since we're here in Asia, and we're talking about success stories in South Africa and in the Netherlands. Let's start with this question. So how easily can countries copy successful models of self-regulation that have been pioneered in other countries? Is the blueprint transferable? Is it quite easily transferable? Or do local differences get in the way?
I would say that self-regulation, you've got to see it in the context of, let's use the analogy of building a house. The architecture, absolutely transferable. Mm-hmm. However, once you are local in a new country, you have different materials that you have to work with. You can work with the same infrastructure, but you're going to face different challenges. There would be local laws that you need to provide for and accommodate for, and just getting everyone on the same page. But about 80% of that is absolutely transferable. If you have the fundamentals, you can work from that.
Right. And Léon, would you sort of?
It's a bit of a cultural thing in the Netherlands to get all the stakeholders on the table to face challenges. And in the Netherlands, there was no regulation. So a long time ago. And when the challenges came, both mobile network operators, both billing processors and merchants immediately saw if we do not self-regulate, we will be regulated or over-regulated. So that was the moment where a foundation was founded where representatives of MNOs, they're all available, they're all active participant in this foundation, but also everybody who processes billings with DCB or premium SMS in the Netherlands, and merchants are all continuously, regularly talking about the regulation.
But was the Dutch example, were you sort of inspired by what had happened in South Africa? Or South Africa was the first one, right, to do this, and then was there some kind of like copying involved?
No, there was no copying involved in this in this particular case.
Right.
No.
Okay. Kev, did you want to add anything to this?
Well, I mean,
to just how transferable the model can be from.
I mean, it is transferable. Everything that's been said there, it's about localization and context. And every market is different. Every market is unique, even within the same regions. We provide tools that are the underpinning to both South Africa and the Netherlands. So on that basis, we contribute directly with what we do as a business to the self-regulation. And it is about getting the right people around the table to get consensus on that framework. There is always going to be nuances. There's always going to be individual mobile operator codes of practice, which are not entirely aligned. But it's about understanding the basic principles, the foundations that Sean mentioned, getting that basis right, and that allows for the nuances to be not mitigated, but to be worked through as the working practice. So rather than working to completely contrasting terms and parallels to work with, you actually have the basis of understanding. It creates the starting point for a market leveling and a market where the differentiation from a CSP point of view comes down to the capability of the CSP in a marketing sense. They're not hindered by different terms in other markets. It provides them with what they are good at: marketing, going to market, and delivering new revenue growth for the operator and for themselves in a stable marketplace, in a stable environment. So it's very transferable. It is essentially a blueprint, but you've got to have that adaptability, and that really starts with the right people around the table.
Great, thank you. So Sean, can you give us an update on what's happening in Indonesia with the self-regulatory regulation drive there?
Yes, absolutely. So actually I was looking at my calendar earlier today to see what the timeline was. And tomorrow, exactly a year ago, we were in Jakarta at a MEF forum exactly like this. And we were talking about the value of self-regulation in this industry. And in the room happened to be the National Telecoms Regulator of Indonesia. And from there, a conversation started. And they said, this actually sounds quite interesting. Right. Because you can imagine when governments are involved or any massive bureaucracy like regulating the entire telecoms industry in a country as massive as Indonesia, things could get missed. And this is a very niche industry. And so they thought that, okay, this could be an interesting solution. Let's talk about this a bit. How would it work? Would you replace us or work in collaboration with us? What do you want to do with the operators and so on? And so these conversations were ongoing, and you need a lot of buy-in because you need trust. You need people to know that we're all working towards the same thing. This morning in our first panel, Alexis and Fred both raised their magic wands, and they said, you know what, we've got to work together. Yes, we compete, but we've got to work towards the same goal. But you've also got to be able to trust that we're all playing by the same rules. So there, you need someone who can come in and say, here is something you can trust. There is an independent verification. There is companies like MCP, for instance, who will independently monitor these things. So these were the conversations. I'm very happy to be able to kind of tease that 1 year on, we are in the final stages of bringing Gamma fully online. We'll probably start taking membership applications by the end of this first quarter. And then we're off to the races. Okay. So
Gamma is the name of the...
Gamma is the name. I am not going to attempt to pronounce the Indonesian...
It's an acronym.
It is an acronym, just like WASPA is. I will butcher it, but yeah, it's Gamma.
Yeah, okay. But were there any challenges that had to be overcome to get to this stage? I mean, a year doesn't seem that long to kind of already be in an association kind of phase. But I mean, have there been challenges to get it off the ground?
Oh yes, absolutely. We had to cater for local legislation, for instance. Right. As what kind of association do you register? Are you a non-profit? Are you this? What is your tax status? So it's bureaucracies that you deal with initially in the planning phases, and then it's getting everyone on board and building their trust. Saying, hey, Mr. Operator, hey, Mr. Merchant, hey, Mr. Aggregator, hey, monitoring company, we all got to work together here because government regulation could be overburdensome, yes. And it's too slow to adapt.
So what stops that trust? What are the fears? You know, when people, all these different players get together, what are the kind of some of the things they fear about?
I don't think it's...
Is it a power game? Or?
No, I don't think it's fear necessarily. I think there is comfort in knowing that I have a very special relationship with X, Y, and Z, and therefore, if I seed anything here to give other people a leg up, I might lose market share, for instance. Right. And it's not that. The pie is big enough to share between everyone, and it makes for a healthier market.
And you're trying to grow the pie.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Léon, you were sort of involved in the setting up of the self-regulatory framework?
No, that was in 2007. So
okay. No, I was going to ask if if you could share, you could have shared some of the challenges that were faced then or were there. I mean, and if they were kind of similar to what
I can say something because I'm personally very close to the person who was involved by setting up the foundation. The challenge was, I actually already gave it away. There was upcoming pressure because there were no regulations, so things went wrong. We talking 2007, so there was quite some aggressive marketing with services like ringtones. There were no regulations around it, and you could feel any moment that the government would come up with regulations. And then I'd like to refer to the panel before. Neil said it's about getting solutions, getting problems solved. It's not about just regulating. So we took control, and luckily all the MNOs were in that initiative and still active, participating. And any problem you'll face, basically almost any problem related to potential consumer harm or being overregulated, those are only things that you can do when you work together. You have to talk together. So how we work often is if we signal these kind of problems in so-called participants meetings, then we park this in a work group, and in the work group there are MNOs involved, there are all parties are involved basically, and together we come with a solution. So it's quite...
is there anything you can add on this? Or,
well, I mean, in regards to only in a working practice, just there is multiple tools that serve the regulatory basis, both in South Africa and also in Netherlands. So we have a monitoring tool which is deployed. So Léon is wholly aware of that, both in his own commercial activities and that at the regulator. And I guess the value it gives, and a lot of the question is, well, around self-regulation, you asked the question about, is there trust issues? Sometimes the trust issue is, well, why do we need that? Particularly if Netherlands was slightly different. There wasn't a dedicated regulator for the function of the VAS, the telemedia space as it was. In South Africa, for example, there was other regulatory bodies and authorities to be aligned with, but it wasn't specific to the sector. And I think the involvement of an independent party helps build that credibility and trust. And as the market has evolved and the tools, particularly around monitoring, have come to the fore in the market, it's created a level of transparency in the market so everybody can take that transparency. So trust isn't something that's earned anymore. Sorry, trust is entirely earned. It's not given on the basis of we hope you won't do something wrong. Everybody knows what everybody else is doing and held accountable to their behavior or non-behavior as it is. So I think that's where it's become really relevant. So reverting back to your original question on trust, I think self-regulation has become a really key component for future growth in new markets because the tools are there to take away the doubt, basically. And it allows a stimulus for growth, revenue projection and growth, alongside, hopefully, the intent is that with that, we go less to the regulatory route and more conformance, and we can allow an easing of regulatory and the flow types. We've heard earlier today of people talking about alternate payment plans, payment methods rather, and with that, DCB trying to stay relevant when in fact there is other more seamless flows conditions. Self-regulation is a really good pioneer for allowing visibility, transparency and trust, and then to allow the merchants to compete in a like-for-like basis in a payment flow mechanic. With the right tools in place, that's exactly what it would allow.
Thank you. So, I mean, I think, Léon, you already answered this question, and I think in partly you have as well. But I mean, what drives self-regulation in this space, in this, DCB and sort of mobile VAS space? And why not leave it in the hands of regulators? I mean, I know it sounds like an obvious question, but yeah, okay.
I'll just add on to what was said previously, and it was to Connor's point as well, is what are you trying to solve for? So in South Africa, for instance, WASPA has a dual mandate. We are there to protect consumers, but also lobby on behalf of the industry, keep their business alive while protecting consumers. So with that as your core mandate, consumers know that there is a place that they could find redress if needs be. Single point of contact, someone who has an enforcement capability. But on the other side, if your consumers have trust in your payment method and know that if something goes wrong, they have somewhere that they can turn to, they trust the industry so much more, they get more comfortable with the payment flows. So it's good for our members, but it's also good for the consumers.
Right, and there's no conflict of interest there. The fact that you're kind of representing both sides. I mean, that's
no, not at all.
Yeah.
If I can elaborate on the conflict of interest, no, there is no indeed. If you look at the value chain, it starts with the mobile network operator. If you bill somebody through carrier billing, you're actually using the relationship that the MNO has with the end user. So the MNO wants everything, wants to do everything to protect that relationship. Because I started the day by saying it indeed. Wrong interaction and the user is, most users will consider changing to another provider. So that's in their interest, for sure. But it's also in the interest of a billing aggregator, and it's also in the interest of a merchant that the payment method, as Jean just mentioned, is trustworthy. Otherwise, it's just not good for carrier billing in that particular market in general. And the only way you can solve that is by working together. And I know that it's happening in a very unique way in the Netherlands. It happens in a very unique way in South Africa and also in Indonesia now. And it is because it was needed. There was no regulation. And that endages any of our business for everybody in the value chain. So that's the need. Why is it complicated? Yeah, there will be emotions around it. Maybe people don't see it immediately. I don't know. I just come here also to inspire people. Like self-regulation is a good thing, but also setting it up, it requires just working together. And I know one MNO is a competitor of the other MNO, but some problems you need to solve together.
I think one of the things that is really powerful from a self-regulatory setup is the makeup of that body is full of context and experience. So what you have is an agility in market. So if something changes in the market, there's a dynamism that comes into play. That might be a misplay. It may not be wanted in the marketplace. If you are typically working at a government regulatory level, it can take many months, sometimes years, for codes of practice to change, for them to get the context, the understanding. They may not even get it right the first time if you're working in a niche environment like a DCB market. So that the value of that self-regulation is there's experience. The fact that there is competitive bodies coming together and collaborating means they're not going to give an inch if somebody else is playing out of turn. They're going to address that straight away. So there's a self-regulation within the organization itself as well as the function it has externally. And I think that's sometimes overlooked in where the real compelling value is to the whole value chain, from the operator right through down to the content provider.
Yeah, and if you've gone through 2 or 3 cycles of, okay, it takes 6 months, 9 months, a year and a half to change these regulations, what we've seen happen in so many other markets is the knee-jerk goes, you know, just burn it all down, shut it down, this is not worth the effort. Who does that help? It serves no one. So self-regulation is very powerful in that sense. We can adapt, we can fix quickly. If we identify something, we meet every 3 months on a code comm session and say, is this still fit for purpose? Does this work? We're seeing this in the market. The operators sign off on this. They know what's going on. So it's constantly just communicating. Self-regulation is also, it's not meant to be punitive. It's just, it's not about the severity of the sanction. It's the certainty that someone's watching and protecting the consumer, but protecting your slice of the pie as well.
Are you not sort of swimming against the tide of what's happening in the wider digital services world? Where, I mean, because in the early days of digital and of the internet and in the States, where a lot of this was born, there was this idea that regulation should be very light touch. I mean, it was very laissez-faire. You know, led all these startups. Now there's been this kind of like, you know, sort of counter, you know, this kind of like, you know, sort of, what do you call it, sort of counter reaction to that. And so, you know, this kind of like, regulators are now sort of like coming down quite heavily right, on these companies. I mean, Australia, they've banned social media for under 16-year-olds. So it's quite interesting that, so I would have expected that actually some people would think, if they hear self-regulation, this is the industry just marking their own homework, there would be skepticism, both in the regulatory world and in the consumer world. But given the fact that, a lot of these big platforms, they say, oh yeah, we're sorting it out, and they haven't really done anything, or not tangibly, so, but is that...
But I think that's maybe where more the role of MCP comes in what we do, because we create that impartiality. We don't play anywhere else in the value chain. Right. We have relationships directly with the mobile operators, and in some markets with the regulators, even where there is a self-governing or self-practicing regulatory framework as well, because self-governance helps the main regulatory body, if one exists, to take action. Because, as you mentioned earlier, Sean, their action is usually quite severe, and without detail of understanding and context, it's usually closure. We close the door until we work it out, and then we open back up with a whole of misaligned new terms and conditions, because we don't want to get burnt again. When in fact, this is a much more educational approach across the wider marketplace. The reality is there is still governance there. There is still other parties that are able to take action if they're not happy with what they see. I think what this does is it self-regulates, it keeps the market in tandem, rather than allowing people to run away, get away with something to the point where it's burning and the whole market is on fire. That doesn't serve anybody more than a couple of months, a couple of quarters. It's self-destroying in a market sense, but the greed of individuals, they will follow that path if you don't have a framework in place which keeps everybody in check. Mm-hmm. But I think it's unfair and unrealistic to expect that to happen at different points in the value chain, but that's absolutely where I think MCP and the equivalent parties do exactly that from an impartial point of view.
Okay, so yeah, so that's really interesting. So that's one of the elements that one of the elements that are used to sort of to bring this about and to make it successful as a model. Is there any other commonality? Is it in all these sort of kind of implementations? Is it always about setting up an association, industry association, that kind of where sort of like all the players in the market have to sort of sign up and have to be vetted by the association? So that I'm just trying to kind of understand the model, right? The blueprint is that essentially, kind of nutshell.
Yeah, I mean that does exist in the sense of often the role within that framework. So in WASPA or the Dutch authority, I won't try to pronounce it. They will have standards. They will create a code of conduct that people adhere to. That's what's monitored, that's what's measured, that's what it gets adapted on a monthly, quarterly basis when members come together, often with flags that have been raised to create the discussion. And often, I mean, even, for example, to bring another marketplace into it, in the UK, there is an independent government-led regulator, Ofcom. However, there is trade associations like AIM where they are not setting the rules, but they are publishing white papers and they're publishing best practice as a routine part of their membership platform. And it's not regulation, it's about developing the good traits to make sure that as people step out of that, it becomes very apparent and the market can do redress very quickly before the market is judged on the behavior of a smaller player or a smaller percent of player. So it's that same mentality of let's look after our own backyard, because if somebody wants to come in and cut our grass, they're not going to cut the grass, they're going to dig it up. And that doesn't serve any value. So to me, the mindset of self-governance should apply in most markets. Going to a framework, I think, has much more benefits, but that isn't always practical, and you have to get, right as we said at the start, the right people buying into that strategy. If you do, it's very strong, it's powerful, and I think the key value is it's adaptive, it's the speed of change. The markets evolve enormously. If we look from quarter to quarter, we can talk about change and evolution. It's very difficult to do that in a formalized governmental regulatory landscape to make that change. They consult on it longer than we would make 4, 5, 6 remediations and changes in a code of practice in the self-regulatory capacity. So I think it's about those solutions again that was mentioned in the previous session. It's how do we create solutions to either problems we have or problems we can see before the problem arises and somebody else dictates the narrative to us. So that's where the real value of this basis is, really.
Okay. And go back to you, Sean and Léon, in terms of the outcomes that came out of self-regulation in South Africa and Netherlands. Is there, can you talk about what was there kind of a growth, a regrowth in market, or that kind of thing? This sort of like, was there some tangible business benefit, or?
Absolutely. First and foremost, there is a regulated market is more appealing for a merchant to enter than a market that is unstable or has a lack of regulations. That means it all contributes to a bad image of DCB or premium SMS as a payment method. So if there is something happening in that market that puts, for example, premium SMS in a bad daylight and it hits the press, etc., you think twice as a merchant before scaling up that payment method in the market. So if you're interested in the market, like you think, okay, Indonesia, very interesting, but a bit tricky, then you take initiatives like has been done to clear that position and make sure that consumers are properly protected and there is a standard and there is a certain sense of cooperation between all parties that are having a benefit of having things being arranged properly in a market. And if I look at the challenges that, let me say this. Imagine the government is regulating. There's all kinds of trends happening that can be a threat for the consumer or for the trust that we like to have from the consumer. Fraud, for example, it changes every day. Now AI comes up. AI, you can only fight with AI. That means you need to work with data. You need to work with behavioral data, for example, so you can get a better fingerprint of is this really the user or is this somebody else? That requires data points that are not only on the merchant side. I can see how you can fight this form of fraud, but not working together. You need information from all parties to be shared. Especially if there's a billing aggregator in between, there need to be transparency, and we're all on the same page. As Jean said, we have the same goal. We want a clean commercial market, so we can grab that opportunity.
To answer your question, WASPA was founded 22 years ago with 13 people. Today we have 340 plus members. It works. The pie has grown. And I think Kev can back me up on this. South Africa's compliance rates on various monitoring tools hovers around 98.5%. Everyone plays by the same rules, and those who don't quickly fall out of favor because they can't keep up.
And I think the other sorry, Léon.
Yeah, I just wanted to add short. It's 4 years or 5 years ago that we had an enforcement case, and then we had to give somebody a fine in the market. I rest my case.
Okay.
I think one of the points just to add is talking about scaling and the value of technologies, the positive use of things like AI and machine learning technology. We deploy that in our algorithms, in our machine learnings. And because of that, we're now, for example, in South Africa, within a few months of just going from a trial process with those guys to go into formal launch, we're scanning in excess of 100,000 advertisement instances every single month. So that's more than 1 million every year. I mean, without those tools being available, nowhere near that scale could be done on a manual basis. As a self-regulator, it's very much a spot check, spot pick activity. This scales on a wholesale level. And that's where the trust can come from, because it isn't about, actually the biggest advertisers get seen more because they're advertising harder. Actually, we're seeing almost everything in the marketplace on that scale. And on that basis, it creates the transparency, which brings the trust. And with the trust, you can start talking about the conditions to optimize and grow the market in a confident way.
Great. Is there anything else you wanted to add? No? I mean, any questions from the audience? Or are we all very keen to head for the drinks?
It's the last session. Everybody wants to drink.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. Yeah, that was great. Thank you.